Ethan Cole was 38, a man who built his living on logic, precision, and the strength of steel and stone. He had always thought of himself as a decent husband, one who worked hard, who provided, who tried to love his family the right way. His wife Lena, 3 years younger, was the kind of woman people noticed. She carried herself with poise, intelligence, and an easy charm that seemed effortless. They had been together for over a decade, married for 7 of those years, and raising their 5-year-old son Mason. To Ethan, Lena had been his partner, his confidant, the one person he believed he could trust with every piece of himself. Or at least, that's what he had convinced himself. The illusion began to fracture one deceptively ordinary Saturday morning. Mason was at the dining table, absorbed in his coloring book, while Lena sat nearby sipping her coffee, humming a tune under her breath. The sunlight filtered into the room, casting everything in a warm glow. But something in the atmosphere was wrong. Lena's smile, the one he had known so well, didn't touch her eyes anymore. Ethan felt it immediately, the same way his trained eyes detected hairline cracks in a beam before anyone else saw them. "What's wrong?" he asked, trying to sound lighthearted. "Nothing," Lena replied too quickly, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. He raised a brow, unconvinced. She leaned in, kissed his cheek, and gave a forced little laugh. "You're being weird," she teased before walking away. Ethan almost brushed it off. Almost. But he couldn't. He had built his entire career on noticing weaknesses, however subtle. Something beneath the surface was shifting, and if left unchecked, it would collapse. That night, lying awake while Lena showered, he reached for her phone. For the first time in their marriage, he allowed suspicion to guide him. Scrolling through, he found nothing explicit, no suggestive photos, no obvious messages. But there was something that made his blood run cold. A conversation thread scrubbed clean, as if someone had worked deliberately to erase it. Only a single name remained. Alex. Alex could have been anyone, he told himself. A coworker, a cousin, a friend from years back. But his instincts gnawed at him. Something wasn't right. He didn't confront her, not immediately. Instead, he observed. He noticed how Lena flinched when he reached for her hand, how her laugh with Mason carried a false brightness, how she canceled their date nights in favor of family time, as though using their son as a shield. And then the thought came, uninvited and poisonous. What if Mason wasn't his? The idea made him sick, but once it took root, it refused to leave. He wrestled with it silently until an opportunity presented itself. When Lena took Mason to visit her sister for the weekend, Ethan acted. He collected one of Mason's old baby toothbrushes, placed it in a bag alongside his own DNA sample, and drove it to a private lab. He requested strict confidentiality, no calls, no emails. He would pick up the results in person. The waiting nearly destroyed him. Each day dragged like an eternity, his mind circling the possibility that his entire life had been built on a lie. When the envelope was finally handed to him, he didn't open it until he was seated at their kitchen table, the same place Mason had spent hours drawing dinosaurs. His hands shook as he unfolded the paper. Probability of paternity, 0%. The words were stark, devastating, irreversible. For a long while, Ethan simply sat there, silent, crushed under the weight of what he now knew. Then he stood, steadying himself. Lena and Mason would be home soon. When they returned, Mason bounded in first, clutching a new Lego set. "Look, Dad. Aunt Claire got me Legos." Ethan crouched, hugged him tightly, his throat thick. He held on a moment longer than usual, knowing that his love for Mason hadn't changed, even if the truth had. Lena entered next, humming, setting down her bag, and kissing Ethan's cheek. He didn't return it. "Everything okay?" she asked, trying to read him. "Mason, why don't you play upstairs for a bit?" Ethan said gently. Mason obeyed without question, and once his footsteps faded, Ethan turned to Lena. "He's not mine." Lena froze. The blood drained from her face. "You're lying," she whispered. Ethan set the envelope on the counter. "I'm not. 6 years, Lena. 6 years of pretending." Her eyes darted to the paper, but she didn't read it. Instead, she reached for him. "It was one time. Just once. We fought. You left on that trip, and I felt so alone. It meant nothing. Please, Ethan. Don't do this." Mason needs you. I need you. Her voice cracked as she fell to her knees, clutching his hand, tears streaming. For Ethan, the sight stirred nothing. She looked like a stranger in his home. I gave you everything, he said, voice cold. My time, my trust, my sacrifices. And you gave me a child that wasn't even mine. But you raised him, Lena sobbed. Doesn't that count? It did, he replied, his tone like ice. Until I realized you've been a lie all along. He leaned down, his voice low, sharp enough to cut. I'm not going to yell. I'm not going to hit you. I'll do something worse. I'll make you live with the consequences. She thought he might eventually soften, maybe forgive. She was wrong. By Monday morning, Ethan had already hired Mara Kent, one of the most feared family attorneys in the state. Mara reviewed the evidence, DNA reports, prenuptial contracts, timelines Ethan had meticulously assembled, even photos from past gatherings where Lena's behavior hinted at infidelity. With paternity fraud proven, that was all they needed. We can sue for fraud, Mara explained. No alimony, no marital claims. Custody is winnable too. Ethan didn't hesitate. His goal wasn't spite. It was Mason. Biologically, Mason wasn't his. But emotionally, Ethan was the only father the boy had ever known. He filed for full custody, citing paternity fraud and emotional damage caused by Lena's deception. When Lena was served at her workplace, she called him sobbing. You're trying to erase me from his life. No, Ethan said flatly. You did that when you lied to both of us. The prenup stripped her of financial claims. No alimony, no house, no stake in investments. She had relied on him for everything. Now she was left with nothing. Desperate, she threatened to expose him to family and friends. Ethan replied with a message as cold as steel. Try it. The results will speak louder than you ever could. Weeks later, she appeared outside his office, gaunt, exhausted, broken. You win, she whispered. I can't fight anymore. You've taken everything. I haven't touched you, Ethan replied evenly. I just told the truth. And the truth has claws. Her tears this time weren't manipulative. They were real. She asked him what he wanted. Ethan met her eyes calmly. I want you to remember. Every time Mason asks why we aren't together, you'll have to choose.